Hey, what's up, everyone? This is podcast number two. I was really surprised by the comments and appreciations for the first podcast, the secret source of high achievers, high performers. It was interesting. I got quite a few DMs from athletes. One very well known athlete who said uh, he said absolutely correct. Like, I thought some of the athletes would push back on me and saying, no, I'm not traumatized. And so that was really interesting, that there's a clear understanding that there's a compulsion problem, that these hamster wheels exist. And it ties in with what I wanted to be talking about today, which is going to be, I'm going to be talking about um, parenting and kids. But if you don't have kids, well, one, you should hear this, because if you're going to have them one day, it's super important. But the principles apply to every aspect of your life. So I watched a documentary last night. I love documentaries on Netflix. There's one with Sylvester Stallone. It's called Sly. And it's a very candid look at his career and his regrets, etc. So it's right up my street. The reason why I like it is because I want to understand his behavior and why he did things. And I learn from watching that and apply it to my work, and see if it, my thesis that there are these hamster wheels that we're not aware of that control us, and see if this documentary would back it up, or would it not apply at all. It completely applied. It was within a few moments. There was a moment where Sly talks about his family and childhood. From what I understood, what I know about Sylvester Stallone and this insatiable desire to achieve, I deduced that his parents were, it was a traumatic childhood, or they were not there and disconnected. And there's a moment where he talks about his father was very abusive and his mother really wasn't there. And for 12, I think he says for 12 months of the year, he was in like a boarding house or boarding home, because they just didn't have time for them. The father was very physical and extremely strict. And he said that there was really no love, there's no connection. And what he understood, what he was saying was, he found in doing an insatiable desire to get that love and connection from an audience. And he understood that for some reason very quickly, that he would, gain value, he could be valuable and gain attention and love. I'm doing air quotes, love, connection, belonging, which you can never get from the hamster wheels. So we all step into the hamster wheel when we come from a childhood where there's a disconnect with the parents, and I haven't met anyone that's fully connected yet. And then we jump into the hamster wheel to try and look for this connection. So it's like an aberrant software program that's created by a little child, but we run it into later life. And he said, I see that I have this insatiable desire for acceptance, approval, and love from the audience, but I don't know how to stop it. I know I have this behavior and I don't know how to stop it. So he described the hamster wheels there. It was a fascinating documentary. I highly recommend it. And I saw many other undesirable things coming from the hamster wheel. And the main one that I took away from at the end was, he spent quite a long time describing how he felt the regret of not being with his kids, because he was so caught up in the movie business and everything. Now, some people might say, well, he has a career, it's important, he was a very special, important person. But what he's saying is those movies, and they're just compared, they're just not real. It's just an illusion, is what he's saying. There's nothing there. It's just imagination. And if you look at his behavior, he did all of those movies and things to just try and gain love. And it was always there right in front of him with his children, but he didn't know how to connect with his children. So he says, you know, if he could reverse time now, he would go back and just spend his time with his children who were real to him. And that really touched me, because he expressed it so well, that there's this, all the movies, all the business, and I speak to a lot of clients on this, is, you know, all the billions and all the things that they create. If we understand that fundamentally it's a selfish act, or a desperate act. So selfish sounds judgmental. What I mean is, if we understand with compassion that the little child's program is still running and they're just trying to get love, connection, and belonging, then we realize that all of these, you know, people who achieve greatness, air quotes, achieve high level things, they spend so much time doing it to the detriment of everything else. And if you speak to most of them, they regret that. And then maybe there's some that's so caught in it, so caught in the quest for the ultimate achievement, that they don't care for anyone else. But it's a very, you know, they say it's very lonely at the top. There's less oxygen, there are less people at the top of the mountain. Yes, but it's not because of it's because that was always there. They were always lonely. They were always alone, and there's no one there, which is why they try and climb a mountain. You know, it's maybe I didn't explain that very well, but I don't think the disappointment that they get when they reach the top and they're all alone is the reason they did it in the first place, if we're truthful. So it's just an illusion. The top of the mountain is an illusion. They're not going to find what they're looking for. And that's what Sylvester Sly said. So bringing it back to what he was saying about his kids, since my daughter Lima was born 7 years ago now, I wanted to always be there, but I didn't, I wasn't fully taking responsibility as my role as a father. When I was there much more than anyone else, I was there every day with my kids, but I was more interested in focusing on my business and my career. And then lockdown happened and I could no longer fly. So I would fly to clients and travel and to work, you know, to give talks and stuff. And so that stopped. And what I realized was I went through a period where, because I was with my kids all the time, I found, you know, like spending time with them and playing with them was boring to me. It was boring and I didn't really enjoy it. So I sort of did it half-heartedly and then would make an excuse and leave. And I started to observe that behavior very quickly, because that's very interesting to me. So I don't just go, oh, that's how I am. So I started to observe my behavior around that and started to see similarities with my parents, the way I don't want to go too much and judge my parents, but they were busy, and probably the way they were brought up was the same way that the parents didn't play much with the kids. So I started to observe this behavior, and I felt the discomfort of staying with them and the boredom. I would start to yawn playing Barbie dolls. And I started to observe that. And the more I realized that there was a disconnect between me and with me and Lima, a subtle disconnect, and with my second daughter, Bo, I started to observe that disconnect. And what I found happened through observing the hamster wheel and observing my behavior was that it dissolved. And I spent more and more time being with my kids, playing with my kids, to the point now is I don't think anything could pull me away from spending time with my kids. I'm not saying that to go, oh, go look at me, how amazing I am as a father. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that my conditioning separated me from my kids. And in understanding that separation and understanding that disconnect, I was able to approach them and connect with them on a much deeper level. And it happened very quickly, to the point that I can hear my kid. I don't think you can hear it, but I can hear them shouting in the background. Um, it 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 dissolved it, and I was able to now see that incredible, the most precious thing that I could ever spend time with, are my girls and my wife. And so it was through observing my behavior that happened. It wasn't like doing techniques to connect with my children. It wasn't reading books. It was watching my own habits and behaviors around them, knowing that they were conditioned in from childhood, as everyone's are. And then I've come to the point where I'm so grateful that I know this now, and I can watch my children, and they're growing so fast. I can spend every day with them. And this also brings up the point, yeah, but what about my business? Well, I've also observed my thinking around that, and my desire for achievement in my business and becoming world renowned and everything. And I've dissolved all of that. And counterintuitively, in doing that and dissolving it, my my reach, and I've written a book, and I'm writing another book. It's counterintuitive that I've actually accomplished more by not caring anymore about, like, not caring, but not being on the hamster wheel of that career. And the balance between being a father, being with my kids, and then coming in and doing my work, all that needs to happen is you watch, either if there's guilt when you're leaving them, or you have a compulsion to do your career, or any type of, you're not controlling your life if you're spending it with your kids and everything. These are all aberrant programs. In my opinion, we're supposed to spend all our time with our kids, and until they leave, and leave the home, and that is absolute pleasure being with them. And I don't send my kids off to school and separate us. My kids don't need school to learn. They learn all the time if I don't control them, if I allow them to self-direct in their learning. And they're incredibly fast learners, and they're incredible. People think our kids are much older than they actually are, because they're not separated from us and sent to a school for 8 hours a day, and then we see them for an hour in the evening. They're exhausted all the time. I mean, with them the whole time. So yeah, just coming back to someone this morning messaged me saying it's very difficult to stay in the present moment. I get so caught up that I should just go slower and be with my kids. It's not about forcing yourself to slow down, and just observe your behavior around your kids. And in becoming aware of how you act, that understanding opens up another door. If you step in and you try and change your behavior to become a better parent, that's not a solution. You're caught in the hamster wheel of gaining more connection, or you're trying to be more valuable to them. It's driven by guilt and disappointment and sadness. And just become aware of all those emotions. If you can look at some of my other work where you connect with the inner child, or the little you, because that's the person that created all these programs. So go to first-hand observation of your behaviors, and you will find that you'll spend more and more time with your kids. So there's truth in that connection with your children is the way, and everything else, all this overworking is all part of an addiction to trying to achieve something that was conditioned into us very early in childhood, to impress others, to gain gold stars and good grades at school. It's just an incessant hamster wheel of achievement. And when we dissolve that aberrant program, you will find that you'll spend a lot more time with your kids. So yeah, kids will if you have kids, you know that they have your programs in you, so they trigger us very easily. So they're awesome for knowing about what you've programmed them, what you programmed into them. What you programmed into them will be reflected back at you, and it will annoy you. Take responsibility for everything that you don't like in your kid, and it's in you, and then observe it in you. But I suppose just finishing this pod is just by saying that it's such a reward. It's such a precious time, and I'm so glad that I've done the work on myself to be able to appreciate them as a friend, and as a father with them, but more as a friend. And if I could just, I'm not trying to change anyone listening to this, but if I could just point in the direction of self-observation, it will free you. It will free your children. And it's the greatest return on investment that you could ever do for anything in your life. There's nothing else that compares to observing your own behavior and dissolving it and freeing yourself from it, because we're all nodes on a blockchain, and we all need to take responsibility for everything within us that we see outside of us, in our kids, in all the wars and the ugliness and everything is all within us. And so we need to observe that very carefully. I'm observing my behavior now, thinking this is a pretty maybe a little bit heavy podcast, but it's super important to me. I definitely recommend that Sly podcast, Sly documentary that's on Netflix right now, and you'll see very clearly his behavior, and then you start to see everyone's behavior, and then you start to see your own, and that is the start of the journey towards freedom. And as I repeat, the greatest return on investment of anything you could do to achieve in this life is to observe that achievement hamster wheel and dissolve it. And then you will deeply achieve, but on a level that most will never be able to comprehend. Thanks so much, and talk to you on the next pod.